Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Training and Tangents podcast with myself, Ben, and my glorious looking co host, Tom. Now, in this episode, we're going to be talking all about injuries, how to go around them, how to actually deal with injuries. Now, Tom and I have had a fair few injuries between
A
ourselves,
lot.
and we have dealt with them with our clients as well. So, in this episode, we're going to go through 5 things that we would suggest you take on board if you have had an injury and how to kind of navigate your way through it. But before we do that, obviously this is the Training and Tangents podcast, so I'm going to interject at some point with a would you rather because it's fun. Tom doesn't know what it is, so I'm going to throw it at him. We'll see when we interject it. I think probably around topic 2 or 3, but I'll keep you guessing. So stick around to make sure you hear what that one is about. But without further ado, let's kick it off with point number one. Tom, point number one: injuries. Let's chat about it.
Okay. So we thought a really nice place to start today would be talking about movement optimism. And for anyone who hasn't heard of that term before, it's basically rather than looking at movements as black and white, like this is good, this is bad, your body has a tolerance to all sorts of different movements. So yeah, there might be an optimal way to lift that will put you in your strongest position, for example. But you can't really classify movements as good or bad. There has to be context around it, and we, like I said, all of our tissues have tolerance, so we have the ability to move through spinal flexion, for example, which is something that a lot of people tend to avoid doing. And I think quite often when you have this black and white approach to movements and to training, you end up kind of caught like fear mongering and stopping people wanting to do certain movements, which quite often ends up being a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. You tell someone they're going to get injured if they do this thing, so they stop doing that thing, so they lose tolerance to be able to do that thing. So subsequently, when they get put in that position at some point in life, they are less able to do that thing.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, I think using this to kind of frame how we look at movement in general and also from an injury perspective, I think um, thinking of things as or thinking of movements as like, am I ready to do that movement? Or um, rather than that is a bad movement is a much better way to frame things and a much more positive way to frame things. And you can just look at it from a perspective of like if you've never been in the gym before and you go in and you do a leg press, for example, you're gonna like maybe have 50 kilos on there, for example. If you go in the gym, you've never been in there before, and you have 300 kilos on the leg press, you're probably going to get injured. And the movement is exactly the same, but what's changed is your ability to handle that load and your tolerance to that load. And I think that's quite a nice way to to frame things for if you're sort of thinking about this. Have you got any sort of specific examples or sort of more to add on movement optimism?
Yeah, so you see, first of all, in the layman's, spinal flexion. What does what does that mean
Oh,
for the people who are listening?
bending over.
There you go. There we go. So, yeah, you see quite a lot of these kind of tier lists coming out with exercises, like people putting them in tier lists, which to me, look, I get the point behind it. It's trying to help people make better decisions when it comes to training, because some movements arguably are more suitable than others and probably easier. So, for example, like a snatch. A snatch is probably on that shelf of like, you probably need quite a bit of skill to be able to pull that off. Where something like a bicep curl, I mean, you tell any kid, show me your muscles. They immediately do the bicep. Like that's like the most no. So a bicep curl is pretty. It's a pretty easy way of getting into things. But yeah, you're right. Like the phrase I always use is exercises are built for everyone and yet no one in particular. You need to find what works for you. Just because someone says something is bad doesn't mean it's going to be bad for you. Another example that you know that I always use is I have a friend of mine who's the same height as me, but he has a totally different makeup in terms of like limb length. So his arms are quite long, like a good bit longer than mine. Actually, I think we measured it. His wingspan is 3 inches longer than mine. Now, typically speaking, from middle finger to middle finger, if you extend your arms like that, that's usually the height you are. So if you put middle finger to the ground, middle finger up, raise it up above your head, that's typically your height. Now, people like NBA players have massive wingspans, which makes them really good at their sport. So my friend has very, very long arms, which means deadlifting for him is just easier because he just doesn't have to bend down as far as me. However, bench pressing is more difficult for him because he's got further to go because he's got longer arms. So there's so much context that needs to be interjected or kind of injected into that the idea of exercise being good or bad. There are no innately bad exercises at all. It's just your suitability, your experience level, your skill acquisition, like all those things have to be a part of it. So if someone says this is a bad movement, look, the point of this podcast is really to educate you so you can see through all the bullshit that is out there. That is basically why we created this. If someone said this is a bad exercise, we want you to be able to go, well, actually, it's not. It just depends on the individual. So I think that's a very key thing to kind of to take away from this point anyway. And when it comes to injury prevention, as you said, you've got to go through that. You got, what is it they say? You have to crawl before you walk, walk before you run, all that stuff. You have to be patient in building up those skills as well. Like you can't look. You could definitely go ahead and deadlift, but again, a deadlift is quite a complex movement. To get it right, anyway, there's lots of potential issues that could go wrong with it. But that doesn't mean it's a bad movement. Because there is that high risk, it doesn't mean it's a bad movement. In fact, usually, well, high risk, high reward in some cases. But again, you need to make sure that your form is spot on for things like that. So taking that little bit more time. The biggest thing was your best ability is your availability. Like it doesn't matter how intense you can train if you keep getting yourself hurt and then having to take time off. Now, getting injured is unfortunately pretty much inevitable. Like you're going to pick up injuries, and it's usually the stupidest stuff. Like we'll talk about it. I've got a good story about some injuries. And Tom, okay, let's just interject this now. There's a tangent. What is the worst injury that you have had?
The worst one was probably I tore my hamstring tendons and my one of my ligaments off my left knee playing rugby. That was pretty bad. Um, and yeah, basically, like you know how a lot of people know about like Achilles tendon, and when that ruptures, it kind of pops all the way up your calf. Basically, the same thing happens to my hamstring tendon. It's like think like almost halfway up my leg. So I've got a nice sort of 6 inch or so scar running up the back of my leg where they basically had to go in, pull that tendon, pull it back down and reattach it where it was meant to go. So yeah, that one was pretty nasty. But
Yeah.
yeah, I completely agree with you in terms of it. Like I think a lot of people focus too much on injury prevention, and training should help you build resilience, but it's inevitable that at some point you're going to have some kind of injury, some kind of niggle, something's
Mhm.
going to crop up. And I think a much better way to look at this is actually equipping yourself to be able to bounce back, to
Yeah.
be stronger, fitter, faster after that than sort of worrying about never
Fixing.
getting injured. And I think that is what I would like this episode to really be about.
Yeah. I mean, there was a quote that I remember hearing. It was like an Olympic athlete is more likely to roll their ankle than someone who never runs a day in their life. I'm like, if you're doing these things, you're putting yourself in the position to get hurt. Now, so I've torn my ACL. I've had a sports hernia, which is an inguinal hernia, and I didn't play sports for 6, 7 years because I was so worried about it getting injured. But then I realized one day I was like, I'm I'm kind of guaranteeing to myself that I'm never gonna have fun. I love sports. Like I love playing sports. In my opinion, there's nothing greater than being part of a team. Like being a team sport is one of the coolest experiences you get as a human. I was taking myself out of that potential of having fun because I was so worried about getting injured, and I realized, you know what? If I get injured, I'll work out around it. I'll learn more about my body, and we'll talk about that later on. But if you don't put yourself in those positions, you're never going to get injured. But if you're going out and training and lifting hard and trying to push yourself, injuries are going to happen. But one of the greatest things you can do, and as Tom's saying, like the point of this podcast is really to give yourself all the tools you need in your toolkit to then be able to navigate and proceed through that injury and obviously treat it in the right way. But yeah, I really like that, like this idea of black and white training or exercise being good and bad. Again, it's a similar thing we do with food. We put these
Yeah.
morality because it allows us to put labels on things, and that's what people love to do. People love to have a label. It makes us feel like it gives us a sense of order in a world that is chaos. Basically, like that is
Yeah.
what we need. We,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
strive for that sense of like good, bad,
And
those labels really, really help us. But yeah, in terms of exercises, it's not a great place to put them.
I think generally like a better way to frame this is rather than thinking of out of a specific technique being good or bad, it's like what are you actually trying to get out of the movement that you're doing, um, and what's the purpose of it? Because like I program stuff where for myself and for clients sometimes where I'm purposely going into quote unquote vulnerable, the air quote podcast air quotes, vulnerable ranges of motion. Um, Granted, it's with like a much lighter load than what I would necessarily do for a normal big compound like a squat or a deadlift, but I'm purposely going into those ranges and loading those ranges because I know that as a result of doing that, I'm going to slowly over time build tolerance to being in those positions.
Mhm.
So that's where some people might look at it and be like, that's a bad movement or bad technique. It's like actually the technique and the movement is good for what I'm trying to achieve from it. And I think being like just being purposeful around how you're lifting and what you're trying to do with it is the most important thing. Because I absolutely hate those videos that you see on Instagram of like the big red crosses over sort of certain movements, certain techniques. And I understand why people are doing it. They're trying to educate people on like quote unquote a better way to do a certain lift. But most of the time I feel that all they do is just create this barrier to training. People like constantly second guess themselves that like, am I doing this right? Am I not? And like people already have this anxiety being in the gym and sort of this worry around that anyway. So if you're being like, don't do this, you're gonna get injured, don't do this, big red cross, big red cross. I think it makes people more fearful and more like less likely to actually go and do some training, which will
Yeah,
be the best thing for them.
yeah. It closes more doors than it opens, basically, and that my one of the cornerstones of my coaching is we want your training and exercise to open as many doors as possible for you in terms of experiences, in terms of confidence, because that's that's my that's been my personal journey of that sounds so cheesy. That's been my personal experience of training. Like it's opened so many doors for me that I previously thought were not available to me. And I want that to be the case for everyone. I want you to see what you're capable of doing and open as many doors as possible. And by giving it that black and white approach, yeah, you're right, 100%. You're closing more and more doors. Like we're trying to encourage people to go and be active and go to the gym or just get out and do something physically active by saying this is a bad exercise. This is a bad exercise. If you're doing this exercise, you're like, there's a lot of it going out there, but yeah, it's definitely not really achieving what you and I, as coaches, want for people, which is we want as many people to engage in this as possible. So if you keep closing doors on people, it's kind of hard to do that. So yeah,
Yeah,
black and white training it doesn't exercises are not black and white. It's going to be
yeah,
individual for everyone. Leading on nicely
100%.
to number two. So when you do get injured, so in fact, this is a good time to tell my gross story because everyone likes a good gross story. So when I was 17, I was playing American football, and me and my friends went down to Dublin to play. We were playing flag football, and I was playing both sides of the field. I was playing quarterback and I was playing safety. Quarterback's the guy that throws the ball. Safety is the guy that tries to stop the person from catching the ball. That's basically it. So I was playing safety, and the quarterback threw the ball, and I picked it off. I basically intercepted it, and I was running back, and I sidestepped everyone, and then the quarterback was the last guy I needed to beat. Now, whenever you're watching someone and you go into sidestep, you kind of typically watch their shoulders. So I was watching the guy's shoulders as I was running up to him. I was like, he's gonna go one direction. So I went to go that direction, and his shoulders suddenly shifted in the same direction. So I was like, oh damn! I went to turn. Now I wasn't wearing my boots because apparently my boots were illegal. I had like metal caps on mine. So I was wearing my friend's boots, which were 2 or 3 sizes too big for me, and they had about a million studs in them. I planted my right leg, went to turn, and my foot stayed in the ground, and everything else from basically the knee up twisted. I heard this massive pop. Like my friend, who was about 20 yards behind me, said it sounded like a gunshot going off. I fell. I kneed the ground so hard that I bruised my bone an inch in. But adrenaline is an amazing thing. I popped back up and ran for the rest of the field. I basically sprinted on a completely torn ACL. Now it felt like the worst dead leg. Like every time I stepped on it, it kind of like the bones slid past each other. Not enough to be bad. Anyway, ran to the end zone,
Benji.
scored, got into the end zone, and was like, "Did I score?" And they were like, "Yeah, yeah." And I was like, "Okay, what's wrong with my knee?" The physio misdiagnosed it and said it was a pulled hamstring. And I was like, "Okay, cool." I was 18, 17. I trusted them. Got up, went to walk, and again the knee gave way, and I was like, "Okay, I'm done." Anyway, got the ACL surgery, and about a week after the surgery, I went to my physio, and the physio looked at my knee, and you couldn't see my kneecap. There was that much swelling in my knee. You just nothing. Back in the days when there's Canterbury's, which are they're coming back by the way. My nephew's got Canterbury's for Christmas, and I was showing my nephew. I was like,
Epic.
whenever I pull my ACL, this is really really helpful. So anyway, I went to the physio. They were like, look, not touching that. Go to see the doctor. Went to the doctor's, and he was just like, okay, come to like my basically practice. Got me up on the table, looked at my knee, kind of palpated around my knee, just touched around my knee. He's like, okay, yeah, we're gonna have to drain that. In my head, I was like, okay, well, he'll do some technique and drain this fluid out. Nope, nope. So I'm gonna visually. So he took out a needle that was about the thickness of the ink in a pen like this.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
Big old needle. And he was honestly, the doctor was an ass. He was an absolute asshole. He had no bedside manner whatsoever. He went, okay, well, look, I'm in a rush, and anesthetic is not going to do anything. It's just going to numb the surface level. So, big deep breath, and he just rammed the needle into the side of my leg.
Oh my God.
For 15 minutes, he was in, moving around, drawing out blood and pus, take it out, drain it, stick it back in, move it around, drain it, and 15 minutes, the worst pain. Like I have a 10 out of 10 in like, I think everyone has like kind of scale of pain that they've experienced. 10 out of 10. That was the worst pain I have ever felt. Now, that was painful enough, but then you also have to consider the fact that, I've just had surgery on this knee, and anything that touches, if you've had an injury, you have this like proximity of like, if someone gets even near it, you're like, whoa, 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 like you get really sensitive about it. So he was like holding my knee down, which is stressful as it was, and then just driving this needle in, moving it without even like taking it. He was just moving it inside the flesh, and there's still in my knee or in my quad, there's a part in my leg, you can feel like a little bit of sinew. It feels like a tiny little pellet of, I don't know what it is, some flesh that as he took it back out again, I must have all bundled up. So that's one of my injuries. I have a couple more, but that was definitely the worst one. I've also said I had a hernia as well, which actually I've got an equally gross story about that. But I'll save that one for later on. I'll get to that one later on as a little bit of a teaser. But the second point that we're going to get onto is when you get injured, a lot of people will shut down. They'll be like, I'm injured, can't do anything. And I have a story of this one as well. I had a client who messaged me about 20 minutes before our session when I was one-to-one PTing. And she said, oh, I've got a sore knee. I'm not going to come in. I was like, what's wrong with your upper body? Get your ass to the gym. If you have an injury, don't let that stop you from training at all. Find a way of training around it. Like if you've hurt your lower body, train your upper body. If you've hurt your upper body, train your lower body. If you've hurt one side of your body, train the other. There's actually quite a bit of evidence to prove that there's actually a carryover or a crossover effect. That if you've injured one side, training the other side actually has a bit of a crossover effect to the other side. So if you've hurt your arm, train the other one. It may feel weird, but there's actually some scientific proof that training the uninjured side helps the other one recover, which, again, is just another proof of how incredible the human body is.
Yeah.
But so you tell me, what would you suggest to someone who has maybe potentially injured themselves?
Yeah, I think you framed that really nicely, mate. I think in terms of I think mentally being injured is really, really hard, particularly when it's stopping you from doing a lot of the stuff that you enjoy doing, but both in the gym and outside of the gym. And I'm sure, like you probably know with your knee injury, um, it's really really hard, particularly in the early days when you're in a lot of pain as well. And I think it's really really important to focus on what you can do rather than getting caught up in like and worrying about what you can't, because it's so easy to kind of wallow in like the stuff that you can't do, particularly at the start. If you've had a surgery or something like that, there's going to be lots of stuff in those first couple of weeks that you're not able to do. so I think mentally thinking in that way is really, really helpful. And also it helps to give some purpose to your training. Like if you've got a knee injury, like I said, you can still go and train your upper body. Maybe like change your goals slightly. Like think of some upper body goals you can go and do. Like you got a shoulder injury, cool. Like is there some lower body based goals that you could look at? Can you look at improving your power? Can you add in some plyometric work? Do you want to try a different modality and sort of start doing some running? I think it's like you say, it's really easy to kind of get like bogged down. Like I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't do that. But actually, like if you take a step back and be like, okay, I know I can't do that stuff. That's crap. What can I do? Let's focus on that because it, it's it's going to make training a lot more enjoyable. And the worst thing about training when you have got an injury is like it being a complete, like I call it a rehab pity party, where basically you're just doing all this really low level like
Uh,
rehab stuff that it like has a time and a place in a program. But
yeah.
if that's all you're focusing on, it's going to make you hate training. So looking at what you can do and making it more enjoyable. And yeah, this is something that I've come to like obviously you've mentioned some of your injuries, and I've mentioned one of mine. I've had surgeries on both my shoulders, which I had done 3 weeks apart. I had labral tears there, so I went from going. I was in a sling on the one side, and then 3 weeks later, that was my that was my good arm.
You could,
So that was
you're
fun.
at that stage. You will get to that
Yeah,
stage, by the way. It's never like, oh, it's you refer to all of your sides like this is my good arm, this is my bad arm, this is my bad knee,
yeah,
my good knee. Like it's unfortunate, but you're 100% spot on about the mental impact. I think it's very easy to think about the physical impact of an injury, but the mental side of an injury, I think personally, is a way more challenging thing to overcome. I still
yeah.
remember my knee. My knee injury came at I mean, it was the worst timing possible. But I remember being so down and so, to kind of put this into perspective. Growing up, I was never picked for sports. I was too small. I just never got playing. And then suddenly, I was getting picked to play because I was training. I was starting to use weights and I was starting to put on some size. So I started to feel like valuable. Like it was the first time that my body was letting me feel valuable to anybody and myself, and it was giving me confidence. And like my teammates were like, "Oh, Ben's on the pitch now. Like things are going to go well," and it was such a good feeling. Gone.
Yeah.
And suddenly, like this confidence you had is just it's just sucked out of you. And yeah, you're right. It can get really bad for you mentally. In fact, you and I talked about this because I hurt my shoulder at the start of, in fact, this time last year, and I remember you and I discussing it because you were helping me out with trying to diagnose what it was and working out what you could what we could do to, well, you and I kind of basically teamwork. We're like, okay, what can I do? What
Yeah,
can't I do?
yeah,
We talked about that. We were saying like how much of a mental drain it is just feeling not as competent and not as confident in your own physical abilities, and having that taken away from you
yeah.
is it's difficult to go through. So having that, changing, as you said, changing your goals potentially will give you that sense of purpose back. And another thing that is a great thing about an injury is maybe you'll start looking at different exercises. Maybe you'll start getting a bit more creative. Now again, creative is a sometimes not a great thing because you start doing exercises that are really not pointless because no exercise is pointless, but it's not as great for you, but it does make you rephrase. So if you can't back squat, I couldn't back squat for ages because I couldn't get my arm back into that position. So I was like, well, what can I do? Oh, I can do like was that the Zercher squat where you get the
Yeah.
barbell in your arms? Horrible. But it was fun
Yeah.
because I was like, oh, I can do that. Like this is something I can do. And whilst yes, it is absolutely vile, it allowed me to work around things. And I think we talked about this in one of the other episodes. Is a part of one of the most important aspects in terms of a trait that you need to have is being a problem solver. Treat the injury as a problem and embrace the problem solving abilities that you have and work out how you're going to get around this thing rather than just stand with your hands on your hips and being like, well, can't do shit here. I'm just going to wait until this goes. Because trust me, if you are active and you're pursuing something else, the time is going to go past a lot faster because you've given
Yeah.
yourself that different goal. So yeah, mentally, injuries suck, but trying to change your approach to things is massively helpful.
And also just on that, like you're going to recover quicker from whatever injury you've got if you're continuing to be active, if you're continuing to train. Like even just getting some more blood flow in is going to help to get some nutrients to the injured site or like whatever. Do like continuing to train in some form or another is going to be absolutely vital to coming back as quickly as possible from whatever injury you have. And I think a lot of people do definitely miss that.
Yeah, I agree. All right, before
But
we go to point number three,
oh,
I'm
oh,
getting you.
gonna
Okay,
put me on the
so
spot.
now if you're listening along to this, let us know. We'll probably post this somewhere on social media as well, so you can answer this as well. Because I'm curious to see. So this is a would you rather because we have this is the Training Tangents podcast. Let's have a little bit of fun with it. So Tom, would you rather? This is a pretty simple one. I've got a list of these that we're going to go through throughout the series. But would you rather never have to sleep again or never have to eat again? This is the
That's
fun.
an
I'll answer too, but I'm curious to know what you think.
um. So if I never have to sleep again, I'm just like
Yeah,
I'm
you like
I'm not tired.
you physically do not need to sleep, as in like your body just doesn't require it,
Okay.
and food as
So
well. Your body gets everything you need from
yeah.
just living.
So
And not,
a bit like an elf who goes into like a semi-trance rather than sleep and then wakes up fine.
yeah, it's like Fendro and D&D, your character in D&D. Yeah, who just all of our characters are like, yeah, we need to sleep, and your guy's like, sleep. Never heard of her. Please not. So
Yeah, I enjoy eating far too much to give up eating. So I would definitely just like sleep's okay, but like if I'm not going to get tired, then yeah,
see,
happy to not sleep.
I'm going the opposite direction.
You're mad.
I love sleep. Sleep is but mainly because I have the most vivid, and I also can lucid dream quite a lot, so I can control my dreams. It's a lot of fun. Like I can fly and stuff. It's amazing. Food to me now again, this is where it's so different, and my mum is exactly the same. Food to me sometimes is just a lot of time. It's just an inconvenience. Like really is. I'm not a foodie really at all. Like I get that people are, but food to me is oftentimes like I think the thing that no one told us growing up is how much time as an adult you will spend thinking about what you're going to eat next. And that's one of the things I help a lot of clients do. I always frame it as like, how much of your day do you spend thinking about what you're going to eat next? I'm going to help you to not really have to do that as much because we're going to put something in place that's going to allow you just to have habits that mean you don't have to do that. But you still have
Yeah.
to think about it. You still have to prep. I hate cooking. Not a cook. I like eating, but like not to a huge degree. So I'm gonna pick the no food.
Yeah.
I'm
But then
curious to see what everyone else will say though.
if you're not going to sleep, think how much time you can spend prepping and cooking.
I'm good.
Not that I would spend all that seven or
You're
eight
like
hours doing
2
that,
a.m. just
but
like bright eyed and just,
yeah,
do you want eggs? No,
yeah,
I'm asleep. I'm flying in my dreams. This is sweet.
yeah.
Okay, so there we go. Would you rather? There's the number one. We're going to go through a few of those throughout the series, but there's a nice soft one for us all to start with. So,
Yeah.
point number three. Go ahead.
Point number three is load management, not load elimination.
Mhm.
So I think a lot of people, when they get injured, they stop doing everything and then their pain goes, and then a week or two later, they go back to doing exactly what they were doing when they get injured and they get another injury.
Yeah.
Um, so a much better approach and an approach that everyone should probably take on this is looking at an injury and yeah, you're going to require a little bit of rest, like maybe a couple of days, but most of the time doing something with that injured site it is going to be a good thing from a very early stage. But the what you're going to do is going to be obviously very low level. Um, so when you get an injury, basically, if you think of a healthy tissue, you've got say your tolerance is up fairly high, and then where you perceive pain will be just a little bit below that. And injured tissue, basically your tolerance has just dropped off a little bit, and then where you perceive pain is going to be quite a bit lower as well. So you're going to be very sort of perceptive of that pain. But there is a drop in tolerance when you injure something. So that's what we've got to respect when we've got an injury, that we like. we just need to train at a slightly lower level. And if we think of a specific example on that, if you think of like a bench press, for example, if your shoulder is sore when you're doing a bench press, can you reduce the load enough that you aren't feeling that pain? Can you reduce the range so that you can go through like a pain-free range of motion? Or can you just do an isometric in a press position? And that isometric is basically like you're just holding, maybe like a press up hold part of the way down. So you're getting some stimulation to that tissue without completely unloading it, and that's going to be really beneficial because it's going to help all the supporting muscles and everything else maintain that strength, so that as you sort of as your body heals and as it repairs, you're going to build that tolerance back a lot quicker because you're not letting it drop off as much. But yeah, I think like one of the biggest mistakes that I see people make is, like I said, they just wait until it's kind of a bit like it's less sore now. Okay, I'm going to go back, and then they just do exactly the same thing, and with no appreciation that probably the tolerance of that tissue has dropped off a little bit, and then they need to spend a little bit of time building that back up.
Yeah, I mean, so I'll use myself as an example here. Obviously, my shoulder's been an issue for the last year now. It's definitely improving, which is massive. But one of the things I did was I give it the time it needed because it was extremely painful. I mean, like, I would wake up in the morning, it'd be pinned to my side, I sleep on my left shoulder, and it would be like, I would have to like grab my blanket and like squeeze because it was that painful. So obviously that was a time to probably not do anything. I was just like, okay, I'm just
Yeah.
gonna let it rest. I'll be lower body for a while, let it rest. But as you said, like one of the best things that I learned was, as you said, so first of all, slow down the movement. If you're gonna get introduced, so
Yeah.
for me it was like a press was really difficult. But I found that if I went nice and slow, if you're moving through a range of motion slowly, it's the muscles working. Whereas if you go through fast, ligaments and tendons are typically the thing that take a lot of that stress. We obviously don't want to do that. You can't really strengthen ligaments and tendons. You can tear them and pop them, which I've done many times, but muscle tissue is the thing that's really going to keep you nice and strong. So going through that range nice and slowly. Now again, we usually say that we want to take the eccentric, which is the lowering portion on a bench press. The eccentric or the negative is where you're bringing the bar down to your chest. That's where we're predominantly trying to spend the vast majority of our time if we're looking to bodybuild. Now that's specifically more bodybuilding. So going a little bit lower there, and then and then slow on the way back up is what I had to do for a while, just to keep the tension on the muscle rather than letting the ligaments and tendons take it. And the other thing I had to do, which is as you said, I just found what range I could get to without it being painful. Now again, typically speaking, we want to take a muscle group through its full range of motion. So again, imagine your arm, full range of motion for your bicep is your arm being fully extended out, and then fully shortened is bringing your hand to your shoulder. That's the full range of the bicep. We want to try and train the muscle through its full range. But for example, if you cannot straighten your arm without your bicep getting sore, well, how far can you get it without it being sore? Train that area for a while, and eventually your body will kind of relinquish that kind of pain. You'll get a little bit more tolerance, as you said. The strength and the tolerance will go up, and that's all I had to do. My bench press, I just had to slowly go. Okay, I can get to here. I can get as low as maybe 6 inches off my chest. Okay, that's as far as I can go without it being uncomfortable. Press from there, come back down to there, press from there. And I just had to slowly, painstakingly build up my range of motion over the course of, it's been a year. And now I can just about get to the depth that I was usually going to without as much pain. And that was massively beneficial. I mean, that was like a game changer for me. But again, you can't just eliminate it all. Now, again, as you
Yeah.
said, there's a period of time where you do have to because you need to let that tissue and that area kind of recover. But after a while, you start reintroducing, and that's the best thing I suggest you do. One of the
Yeah.
best things that I tell my clients as well is that take the time, because if you take the time that you need to recover, you will get back to where you were faster. And the other thing to add here, and hopefully this isn't going to interject into any other points, but part of one of the coolest things is the process of going back up to where you were. So if I've been training for 20 years, like it's been a while. I have, I'm not as strong as I was because of my shoulder, but because I've been at that strength before, my body is able to get back to that level of strength much faster. So it's much easier to rebuild lost muscle tissue than it is to build new muscle tissue because essentially the blueprints are there. your body has been through that process. So that's one of the most fascinating things to me is that, and one of the most kind of assuring things is that, hey, look, if you've had an injury, take the time, you'll get back to where you were before and much, much faster if you're just patient with it and you do the right things and you will get back to where you were. So don't panic and think, oh, I need to go back to the weight I was using before I injured myself, because that's a pretty easy way of then just ensuring that you're going to go through that cycle again of injury. Go back, train to the same intensity, go back, injury. It's just a cycle. So building it up slowly. And I find, I don't know, I might be weird, but I'm really enjoying the process of building my strength back up again. Like it's a very
It's
satisfying thing to me.
it's almost like you're PBing all over again because it's like if you're always benchmarking to where you previously were, like yeah, training's going to be really frustrating if you're at a lower level. But
Mm-hmm.
if you're like okay, cool, I'm at this level at the moment. This is where where I am. This is what I can tolerate. Then every week you can pretty much PB because you're building on that.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite a nice way to look at it. Like, yeah, you might still have in your head that benchmark of where you were at before, but just appreciating where you're at and then just like celebrating those little wins of like, okay, it's a little bit better, it's a little bit better, it's a little bit better. And that was something like when after one of my knee injuries, that was something that I found really useful mentally, for like from a pain perspective more so than a strength perspective, but the strength side of things kind of came in a little bit later. But like those early days when you're just in a like you're in a lot of pain all the time. It was like kind of looking back over the past week and being like, actually, like, yeah, day to day, it's kind of like the pain level is kind of the same. But like, if I look at where I was a week ago, actually, I'm in a much better position now. And just like, yeah, sometimes right, like looking kind of back in the short term and being like, okay, cool, I was here and now I'm at this level, but like either pain or strength can be really like really motivating, and you know you're kind of going in that right direction. And just to kind of add to what you were saying, mate, in terms of like tendons specifically really like to be loaded. Like if you have a tendon injury, if you just like if you don't do anything on it and then try and go back, all you're going to do is re-injure it, and you're just going to go through this cycle of it getting weaker and weaker and weaker. You have to, if you've got a tendon injury, you have to be doing like starting with like isometrics, which are your sort of static holds, but doing you have to be loading it consistently to actually make any kind of progression and improvement. Otherwise, it'll just hang around and linger, which those sort of injuries do for ages and ages.
Yeah. Yeah. Shall I tell you about my sports hernia now before we go into the next one?
Oh, go on then. I know you're dying to.
Okay. So this does get a little bit gross, but that's what everyone's here for. So I had torn my ACL. I had recovered from that in. This is actually kind of cool. I recovered from my ACL in 6 months, which was a no. I was 17, so I was like, I was very young, so my body was in a very good place of regenerating and healing. But I was thrilled to be able to get back. Now I went and then played rugby, so I was playing American football when I tore my ACL, and I went to start playing rugby with my friends at a club and played the entire season. Now this time I was training in my garage. Now there's two situations that I think I got the hernia. One, I was doing a squat in my gym with an EZ bar. By the way, I was squatting with an EZ bar.
How?
I
Why?
don't know. It was like I just remember we had an EZ bar. I didn't have a barbell in my garage because my garage, like, it was one that Santa got us, and I had
Yeah.
this old ass EZ bar. So I just put it on my neck and I would just squat because I was like, look, I need to squat. I want to get faster. Squatting's a pretty good way of
How,
getting faster and stronger.
how did it even fit on your shoulders with weights on it?
Like no joke. I looked like I was like boxed in. It was so
So,
short, but I had these massive like old school
so
plates. Yeah, not
for
that.
context, for anyone that doesn't know, an EZ bar is one of the bars you normally see on like a preacher curl machine that people do
Yeah,
bicep curls with.
it's
Um,
bendy in the middle. Yeah,
yeah, they.
it's not for squats. Let's put it like that. It's not for squats. But I
I'm
remember
surprised
doing
you're
it.
even able to, mate. I'm impressed.
Thank you, thank you. Well, my innards weren't because I remember going down and I was doing like so many reps. Again, I had no idea what I was doing back then. I was just making stuff up, and I was like, "Well, squatting, yeah, cool, I'll do that." And I remember going down and feeling like this slight burning in my kind of groin area. I was like, "Oh, maybe that's just pain. Maybe that's just muscle pain. Whatever, cool." I then went and played a game that Saturday, and it was the last game of the season. It was blisteringly hot. Like none of us had water. I had both cramps in my calves. It was the last play of the game, and I dump tackled a prop. Now I was at this point maybe I was very very small. Like I was not big or not heavy. I was fast, and that's about it. But I dump tackled this prop who was maybe about 30 kilos heavier than me, and I just got that sweet spot where my shoulders hit perfectly in his hip, and I was like, I got the
Nice.
back of his knees. I'm gonna dump tackle him. As I picked him up, I felt like a it wasn't a pop. It just felt like it felt like something moved in my groin, and I was like, huh. Didn't think of it. Dumped tackle the guy. We ended up winning the game. Great celebrations all around. And for the next couple of months, I worked in an ice cream shop. This is such a tangent. I love it. But I was cooking ice cream, and I felt this thing way down low, like way down low. I felt something move, and I was like, that felt gross. That was really, really gross. So I went around to my friend's place, and now, again, 18 years old, I went around to my mate's house, Callum. Callum was sitting playing the PC, and I was like, here, Callum, have you got like a lump, like, you know, right beside your boys? And he was just like, he didn't even like, he just literally stuck his hands down and sweat and went, yep. And I was like, cool, I'm fine. That's normal. Everyone has it. Awesome. I had an inguinal hernia, so I don't know what Callum had because he did not have a hernia. So I went through the process of getting the hernia fixed. Now I've got a scar that's maybe like 4 inches long, and they managed to fix the inguinal hernia. I got back, and the recovery from my hernia was it was excruciating. You do not realize how much you use your core, even to speak, to laugh. My friends were under strict instructions to not make me laugh, so you know
Oh,
what they
that's
were
hard.
doing. Yeah, you know exactly what they were doing every time they came around my house. Let's watch
Savage.
this video on YouTube, Ben. And I was like, don't you dare watch that video. So I remember sitting on the sofa, and I was like, oh, I need to pee. I went to get up, walked up, and I was living in my parents' house, and there's like one flight of stairs and then another small flight of stairs to get to the bathroom on the first level. Got up the stairs at a glacial pace, like it took so long to get up. I got to the bathroom door, and I was wearing like pajama bottoms because again I was just chilling and recovering, and I felt this like warm sensation running down my leg, and I was like, "Have I peed myself? Like that's really embarrassing." And I was like, "But I don't feel the relief of peeing. Like I didn't feel like relief at all." So I looked in my pajamas. I literally lifted the waistband of my pajamas, and there was blood pouring down my leg. I mean, like just like there was a tap, and it was pouring down my leg. The scar had opened up at the bottom of the hernia, so there was like a size like your fingernail, just opened up and was just pouring blood all over my leg. And I literally, I was just like, "Mom!" just on the floor. My mum's a nurse, thankfully, and she came up and was like, "Oh my goodness, what is going on?" And yeah, the scar had just completely reopened. So I had this hole in my body where blood was just pouring out. So there's my inguinal hernia story. So took a while to recover from that too. So on to point number four.
That is horrid.
Yeah, oh, dude, I got so many stories about injuries and stuff. Like anytime I say like any injury, any illness, anything like that, like I was collecting like Pokemon back in the day. Like I've had
Yeah.
like gout, cellulitis, you name it. I probably had it, but I'm
I,
still alive.
at one point, it was like I was doing a tour of like the hospitals around the UK.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That sounds about right. That sounds about right for me as well. Although I try to avoid hospitals at all costs, apparently, because I asked my friend Callum whether he had
Yeah.
hernia.
Well,
So there you go.
nowadays you just ask ChatGPT, wouldn't you?
But yeah, just like, what's this hole in my body?
It'd
Why am I
probably do a good job of
bleeding?
diagnosing it, actually.
Yeah, it probably would actually. Okay, so point number four: pain doesn't always equal damage, and damage doesn't always equal pain. Now, before we started recording this, we're kind of discussing about this in a bit more detail, and pain is not always it's not always going to be the indication of the severity of an injury. So I tore my ACL MCL meniscus 4 or 5 years ago. I didn't really experience much pain at all. In fact, I was in such little pain that I considered going and playing again without knowing how much I had actually damaged my knee. That is a serious injury, but I did not really feel anything. Whereas the example you use was a paper cut. Give,
Yeah.
give, give it the example. Like the paper cut is an extremely sore thing, but it's not really
Minimal
that serious, is
damage.
it? Nah,
Yeah.
I mean it sucks and it's sore, and if you get any salt or anything in it, then that sucks. But
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
so
Why are you putting
so
salt in your paper cuts? You're nasty.
isn't that what you're supposed to do? Or lemon and salt? No, 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 just me. Okay.
Oh.
So yeah, pain doesn't is there's not always this equal trade off of pain and injury. So chat more about that in terms of what we can do to help people with this.
Um, So yeah, I think knowing this is really useful. Obviously, if you do have an injury, because when you've injured something, particularly if it's like you've injured it multiple times, your perception of pain will be a lot higher. You'll be a lot more sensitive to pain, and it's basically like when you do have an injury, like generally trying to avoid painful ranges is going to be a good thing because every time you feel pain, you're stimulating that pain pathway, so it actually gets stronger. So basically, every time you move into something painful, you're almost kind of telling your body to feel it, even if it's not actually causing more damage. And I think it's like pain is really, really fascinating because there's so many other factors that can potentially impact your perception of pain. Like if you have a bad night's sleep, or if you've got a lot of sort of life stress, work stress, that sort of thing. Like loads of these other areas in your life can impact your perception of pain. And I think it's like I said, if you've got an injury that's like you've had a surgery, or like it's a long-term injury that you're rehabbing, you can't expect every day to be like the pain to be less. And sometimes you might have done a little bit too much, but sometimes it might just be because of one of these other factors. And I think it's really important to be able to kind of separate yourself what that is, because like we've spoken about earlier, it's hard enough when you have an injury, like mentally, and but every time then, if it's a little bit more sore, if you've got a little niggle kind of creeping in, or like that sort of thing, you're like, I've caused a lot of damage. Like a lot of time you haven't. It's just like it's a bit more sore that day.
Yeah.
And same with like muscle spasms and like little niggles that tend to come in like day to day, week to week, seemingly more so since as you get a little bit older. But I remember like a few months ago, I was in the shower. I was like, oh, my back feels a little bit funky, and I bent forwards and like pushed my shoulders forwards, and I just felt this massive like clunk in the middle of my back. And I was like, that's going to be a bit sore for a little while. And it was just like so, a muscle had spasmed a bit, and it was a bit sore for the next 3 days. I managed what I was doing training wise. Like I tweaked some things a little bit, and then it was absolutely fine. But I think a lot of time with things like that, people are like, "Oh no, my back's really sore. It's going to be like," they kind of catastrophize it and think it's going to be bad forever, which invariably then makes it worse and makes it last for longer. Do you get that with people?
Yeah, yeah. So I've had a couple of clients who've had bad lower backs, and when you have hurt your lower back, I've hurt my lower back. I think most
Yeah,
people have. Most people have. Any slight movement can trigger it, and you're like, oh, oh,
yeah,
crap. But it's just your nervous system kind of doing its job of, hey, look, you've injured this before. Now, it's a sensitive area, as you said, you're more aware of it. Like, if you've never hurt your back before, first of all, what are you doing? And can you tell us what you're doing? But you're not going to be aware of your back. Similar, like
yeah,
I watch American football, I watch any sports, and because I've torn my ACL, every single time someone goes down awkward, I'm like, ACL, it's gone. Yeah, no, the ACL's gone.
yeah,
Because you have that experience. So your body is also like, it's super smart. Like it's sending you those signals because like, hey, you hurt this before, but what we need to do is start introducing movements that are going to teach your body, hey, look, yes, this might feel a bit like funky, but you can move through this range. And the example I used before we started recording was the idea of your hamstrings. So a really good example of this is stand up. If you're listening to this, if you can, stand up, reach down and try to touch your toes. Stand up again, give it a couple seconds, and then reach a little bit further. Now you feel that tension in the back of your hamstrings, but the second time you reach down, you will be able to move through that range a little bit further because you're essentially telling your body, "Hey, yeah, look, this is a position we're not really used to doing. Like no one really reaches down and touches their toes with a straight locked out leg. That's not what we do. We bend the leg. But as you move through it, the discomfort is kind of like it's just like a warning like signal, and you're like, "Hey, look, this is a false alarm, essentially." So every
yeah,
time I use this example all the time, I stretch down, I can maybe get like my first knuckle of my finger to touch the floor. Stand up, reach down again, I can get the next knuckle down. Stand up, reach down, I can get my full fist into the ground. Next one, back of my hand. Now I've not like magically lengthened my hamstring. I'm basically just telling my body, hey, look, yes, you're sensitive to this range, but you're safe. Like this is a fine area to move through. And again, if you've got an injury, again, lower back being the example, avoiding it entirely is not going to make it better. Like you can't just
Yeah.
turn it back onto it and be like, oh, it doesn't exist. It doesn't, any movement at all hurts it. And like, yeah, but you need to encourage your body to move through those ranges. You need to basically say to it, hey, look, I'm communicating with you that this is okay. So
Yeah.
introducing new ranges is big, but yeah, it's very, very common. If you've got an injury, your body's going to be way more sensitive to it. But again, a lot of the time it's just that kind of alarm system going off, and you kind of just need to go in and punch the code in and be like, it's fine, it's a false alarm.
Yeah, 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 definitely. It is mad, and like it's like my lower back this year has been the worst. It's I tweaked it earlier this year, and it's been the worst it's ever been. And it was actually quite an a frustrating but an interesting process to go through because like a lot of clients that I coach do have lower back pain or have had lower back issues. But I was just finding there were some days that like. I knew I hadn't hurt it more, but for whatever reason, like I'd maybe been sitting for a little bit more, or I'd been a bit static, or I'd slept funny, and I'd wake up the next day and it would feel like really crap. Like, but all it was like the muscles in there just spasming and holding that tension. And if you can if you appreciate that, you can kind of it's a lot easier to kind of mentally get over it because you can be like, okay, going to do a little bit of low level movement, make sure I'm not sitting so much, make sure I'm doing all these things that I can do and I am in control of doing, and then it does get better. And I think it's yeah, when it's like that for a long period, it's like you do start to worry that that's going to be you forever. Um, and this leads really nicely onto point number five. Point number five that we've written down here is don't write yourself off because your body is unbelievable at adapting, and like if you have got an injury right now, don't think it's going to be like that forever because you it's not. If you do the right things and give your body the right input, you can absolutely like recover from near enough anything because your body is so good at adapting. And I think it's really interesting with like spines, for example, when if someone's got a bad back and they're like, I'm going to go get a scan, it's like, okay, but you have to appreciate with this, like 30% of people in their 30s, 40% of people in their 40s, 50% of people in their 50s will show some kind of disc degeneration or something going on if they get a scan. Most of those people are asymptomatic and have no pain. So, like, yes, that it might show something, but it's probably going to show something for a large proportion of the population who are moving pain free and are fine. So
Yeah.
it's so not saying it's not useful because in some situations it is useful to get that scan, but
Hmm.
a lot of the time if you're just like controlling what you can control, working within your tolerances and slowly building them back up, you are going to get back to a place where you're able to do everything that you want to do. And just what like one more kind of slight tangent from that is when
Tangent?
it's
Oh,
well, it's not really a tangent. It's kind of the same vein. But when people have an injury, they focus on getting pain free. But actually, if you focus on getting like building the function back, that's what we should be doing because like pain free kind of doesn't really mean anything. Like we said, pain doesn't kind of show damage. If you focus on getting back to like a good level of function, that's going to be where you're going to be able to kind of carry on doing the stuff that you want to do for the long term.
yeah, I agree. It's the confidence you get back from that, and kind of the another aspect of this is you use that like the body is. You're right, and the more you learn about the body, the more you realize how it sounds a bit cheesy, but I don't care. It's a gift getting access to having a human body. Like it really
Yep.
is. The more you know about it, the more you understand about it, the more you're like, this thing that I get is a work of art. I've always said that the human body is an absolute work of art that we get to pilot. And if you are writing yourself off, you're never going to experience the amazing things that your body can do. So, an example I'll use is when I was hospitalized the first time with a chest infection, my lung functions dropped to 66%. So, to kind of put this into perspective, 100% is someone my age, weight, and height without cystic fibrosis. That's what they would expect their lung function to be. So, clone me, that clone who doesn't have CF, their lung function should be 100%. previous to that, the drop, mine were 100%, 115%, all the way up to like 130 when I was a kid because I
Uh,
just never stopped moving. Yeah, I was just always running around. So I was just fitter than the average. So it dropped down to 66%, which it's hard to explain to someone who hasn't felt this before, but imagine going to take a deep, okay, this is practical here. Go to take a deep breath, right? And then imagine as you're about halfway through that, someone just clamping your lungs closed. That's basically what it felt like. I remember, as I said, in my parents' house, my parents live in an old Victorian house. There's one, two, four flights of stairs to get to my room in the top floor. Me, my brother, and my dad, for some reason, all hold our breaths when we run upstairs. I don't know why. It's like a weird thing we all do. We all find out we did that. But I remember getting to the top flight and standing outside my room, being like, "Whoa!" Like I can't breathe. Like this is like it. It was so scary. So I was hospitalized for a while. I was told that my lung functions may stay at that percentage for the rest of my life because the real concern is that once lung tissue gets damaged, it gets damaged permanently, and then you lose that percentage essentially. So the doctors were like, "Yeah, look, there's a chance that your lung functions may stay at this," and I knew they were wrong. Like it was weird. I was like, "No, I know you're wrong because I don't feel good. I've got a cough. Once I get rid of this cough, I will feel better and my lung functions will go up." Anyway, so I had to basically, I got out of hospital and my sole goal was to get my lung functions back up to 100%. It took me 18 months to get them back up.
uh,
18 months. Like, I used to work in a corner shop and I used to run or cycle to the shop and I was always late because I was 18. Like, it was not the most important thing in my life. But I remember I was literally running late and I went to run and the first time I did it after getting out of hospital, I think I made it like, I always measured it by lampposts. So I would always go, I'll run to that lamppost and run to that lamppost. Now, before I got sick, I could run down there, get down to the shop, and I could serve people straight away without even being out of breath. Super fit. I remember running, and I maybe got 100 meters would be generous. I got 100 meters,
really.
and it felt like I was breathing through a straw. It was horrendous, and I was like, okay, well, next time I'll try and get to the lamppost after this one, and I just had to do that over and over and over and over again. And I eventually got them, as I said, back up to 100%. That proved to me what your body can do. Like,
Yeah.
as I said, the body is incredible at adapting. Now, I'm not saying that you can fix lung functions. Now, if anyone with CF has listened to this, my lung tissue hadn't been damaged. Thankfully, that's why I was able to recover it. But it proved to me with hard work and a lot of consistency what you can do. Now, again, I really need to be clear here that that was a situation that was very personal to me. Cystic fibrosis is a genetic illness. It affects everybody in a vast variety of different ways. But that was my experience of it. It really taught me like what the body is capable of doing if you're patient and you just keep showing up. And that is, I think that's a really nice place to kind of end the episode.
Yeah.
If you
Absolutely.
can, please leave a review. Where are we at? We're on YouTube, we're on Spotify, wherever you're listening to this, watching this. Please leave a review, drop a comment in the comment section, subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow us on Spotify, leave a review on iTunes, all that fun stuff. Tom, have you had a good podcast? I think this
I've
has
had a
been a
very
good
good
one.
podcast.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this has been
I
fun.
I agree, mate. I enjoyed the Would You Rather. I
Yeah.
don't tend to like being put on the spot, but that was a good one.
Oh, well, I've got plenty more. I have got plenty more that I
Excellent.
will fire at you, but
Ramp
maybe
ramp them up as we go through the episodes.
I've got some pretty good ones, but I thought we'd start with something, a little bit of a softball for you. But look, if you
Nice.
can, again, please leave a review. If you can follow us on Instagram, if you're not following us already, if you go over and follow the Training and Tangents Instagram page as well, we'd massively appreciate it. And with that, we will see you in the next one. Have a good one.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thanks for listening.
We are